Much joining us now, Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne from House Small Business and Byron York from the Washington Examiner. Thank you both for joining us tonight. Okay, we reported last night how top Democrats led by Adam Schiff went over to Paris drinking wine and doing fundraising. I want your reaction, both of you, to what former Democrat Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard is now saying and why she's leaving the Democrat Party. Watch this.
I can no longer remain in today's Democratic Party that's under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers who are driven by cowardly wokeness, who divide us by racializing every issue and stoking anti-white racism, who actively work to undermine our God-given freedoms that are enshrined in our Constitution, who are hostile to people of faith and spirituality, who demonize the police but protect criminals at the expense of law-abiding Americans, who believe in open borders, who weaponize the national security state to go after their political opponents, and above all, who are dragging us ever closer to nuclear war. I believe in a government that's of the people, by the people, and for the people. Unfortunately, today's Democratic Party does not. Instead, it stands for a government that is of, by, and for the powerful elite. Now, I'm calling on my fellow common sense, independent-minded Democrats to join me in leaving the Democratic Party.
What do you think, Congresswoman?
I mean, I think, listen to what she said. Everything she said is accurate. I've known Tulsi. I've met her when I was mayor of the city of Irving. When I talked to some of my colleagues on the floor, they will say she was one of the best Democrat Congress members that they ever worked with. She was open-minded. They didn't always vote the same. They didn't always agree on policies, but she at least had an open ear. And I think her party really did her a disservice when she ran for president.
Yeah.
But everything she said, I mean, I don't even recognize the Democrat Party anymore.
Yeah, what do you
think? They keep changing. They change the rules when it's not working, and God love her.
Byron, what do you think? I mean, now the Real Clear Politics has the Senate at 50-50 in terms of who's getting control. The GOP seems to be starting to lead there. And, talking about elitism, Byron, the Wall Street Journal found 2,600 government officials across 50 government agencies bought stock in companies they oversee and enforce, while those same companies were lobbying them for lucrative government contracts or favorable regulation. We're talking the EPA, FDA, Pentagon, Justice Department. What's your reaction to all of this?
Well, on Tulsi Gabbard, it sounds like she's close to becoming a somewhat Trumpy Republican. Now, she's not actually joining any party. She just left the Democratic Party, but we'll see where she goes in the future. This part about the executive branch is really widespread. We're talking about thousands of employees who are buying stocks in companies that lobby their agencies that they oversee. Now, this echoes what's going on in Congress and in the House of Representatives, the bill that Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to pass. Now, Congress loves to pass laws that apply to everybody but itself. It seems to me it's going to be hard for Congress to address this issue in the executive branch of people buying stock in companies they oversee without cleaning up its own house first. Not sure they're going to do that.
Yeah, so what Byron is saying, Congresswoman, we're going to now shift to this topic because all of that is going on while Democrats, the polls show, Gallup, Monmouth, NPR Marist, they're underwater on both inflation and crime. The last time the GOP had advantages like this was so big. It was in 1946. We're talking red wave midterm elections that could be coming up. Can you respond to what Byron was just talking about?
Yeah, I think people are sick of seeing, their elected officials held to a completely different standard and not accountable for their actions. I've supported, preventing them from being Congress members from being able to have different rules than the rest of us. And yet we still can't get these bills out on the floor. You hear Democrats talking about it on the floor. You hear them talking about it in interviews. They say they're going to do something about it. We can't even vote on these bills because Democrats refuse to put them on for a vote.
So they're not doing their job. In other words, you vote them in and they're not doing their day job in terms of oversight and protecting the American taxpayer. Byron, I want you to what the Congresswoman just said. Now we've got top Democrat Alyssa Slotkin admitting massive government spending is to blame for inflation. You're going to hear that. And you're going to listen to what Senator Bernie Sanders is now warning Democrats about the midterms. Watch.
I think inflation is obviously a worldwide phenomenon. I am open to the fact that we have to make decisions here in the United States. Democrats are in power. We're in the White House, in the House, and the Senate, even if it's slim margins. So sure, I do think that there is a rightful skepticism about particularly the last COVID package. And I think that's why you've seen a lot of us in Congress really shy away from another COVID package, even when the White House was proposing one this past summer.
We've got to rally the American people not only around the abortion issue, the right of women to control their own bodies, which is enormously important, Robert, but we have got to do more. We've got to reach out to working families today who are hurting.
Okay, let's break this down, Byron. The Dallas Fed says inflation is tearing into U.S. wages at a pace that's been the worst they've ever seen in 25 years. Now you've got Alyssa Slotkin blaming government spending for inflation, and Bernie Sanders is saying to Democrats, don't make the midterms about abortion. Are they so out of touch in D.C. they don't know what's going on in the real world?
Well, they're out of touch in D.C., but they're actually quite in touch with what's going on in the rest of the world. Really interesting that Alyssa Slotkin would come out and say this, because everybody knows that with the American Recovery Act, that huge so-called COVID relief bill passed in the first months of Joe Biden's presidency, Congress spent way too much money, way more than was needed. And a lot of Democratic wonks have been saying that for a long time. Interesting that a member of Congress now does. As far as Bernie Sanders and the abortion issue, something really interesting is happening. Just in the last few days, you have Bernie Sanders saying this. You have James Carville saying, look, abortion is a real issue. It can't be our only issue. Politico Playbook this morning basically asked, is the Dobbs effect waning, meaning the effect from the Supreme Court's Dobbs decision, the abortion decision, is it becoming less powerful for Democrats? What's happening is it is waning, and the big issue, and what's always been the big issue, inflation, is still there.
Congresswoman, your final word.
Well, economy is very important. I think when you're looking around and what you're hearing is people are suffering. They're looking at their paychecks. They are looking at not being as valuable as they were, a year ago. They're looking at the gas price being up. That's the number one thing that they're talking about.
So forgive me, I'm so sorry to interrupt. Do women vote on abortion, or do they vote on kitchen table issues, Congresswoman?
I think women vote on every single issue that's out there. I think it's important to not define it as a woman's issue. When we talk about abortion, if you want to talk about why it's so radical, Democrats, I was on the House of the floor when they voted to allow abortion on demand, fully taxpayer funded up to the time of birth. That's the extremism. I think that's what people are reacting to, not the Dobbs case.
Congresswoman Van Duyne and Byron York, thanks again.